What's the worst sex ed advice you received at school? Don't try to stick your DCK too far in. BC a baby will grab hold of it and pull its way out. The sex ed I had in school consisted entirely of a 20-minute video in 3rd or 4th grade that basically amounted to sometimes you'll pee your pants when you're asleep but it's not pee. This is normal, and in health class we had a unit on STDs. Not like how to prevent, treat them. But wow. This sucks. Look at all those rashes and hives you can get. No girl will ever want sex from a boy. Ever. This isn't advice, but my sex ed teacher told us. Ejaculate is the whitest substance on earth. Edit. Whoa. This really blew up, so I'll add some more detail. She was a relatively young teacher. I did argue with her, but she just told me to stop being difficult. I insisted she was wrong, but she said the textbook knew more than me. But being teenage boy at the time, your sex ed teacher's cum looks like whiteout. We were told that a wet dream produced an amount of fluid tantamount to wetting the bed. They didn't even tell us what fluid it was. If you have sex, you will get gonorrhea. And you will die. I knew this genius at school from the football team who I once heard saying, yeah, so if you finish inside a girl, try your hardest to pee in her. The acidity of pee will kill the sperm. Fortunately we were in anatomy class and my teacher heard it too. She gave us a quick and actual sex ed class right there and then. As a guy, the only thing I learned from sex ed, and this was for all the boys to learn once the girls were separated, was that pregnancy can happen, and this what an anatomically correct penis is. An anatomically correct penis? Were they trying to shame some poor kid? The STD talk during my middle school's health class comprised of a vague video showing a paintbrush dipping into various paints, one after another, until there was a messy smear of colors everywhere. The advice was verbatim: girls, don't let other people's paint get anywhere near you. Art class afterwards was real fun though. Don't have sex or your penis will fall off. Flex tape fixes everything. I'm 24, and when I was a freshman in high school, my health teacher legit told us that women could get pregnant by just sleeping naked next to a man. She told us of her best friend who never had sex, but kissed and hugged a man naked and got pregnant. I mentioned my age because that kind of batch tea crazy take on sex ed seemed outdated to us, and it was relatively recent. It was a public school too, BTW. Yeah. She would get naked just to kiss and hug. Seems like a legit story. Condoms are worthless, so don't bother. This was at a public school in an abstinence-only state. The statistics they gave us were that condoms fail 16% of the time, because there are tiny pores in them, and sometimes human sperm can swim through those pores. The HIV virus is 100% smaller than a human sperm, so how often do you think it can get through those pores? As an adult, I found out that these BS claims are based on lambskin condoms, which actually say right on the package that they are not recommended for the prevention of disease, because they do, in fact, have microscopic pores in them. But like, I don't even know where you would get these condoms. All the ones I've ever seen in a store are latex, which has no pores, and are far from useless. It was unsolicited sex advice from a psych TA. Don't go into dark alleys because you will end up having sex in there. With who? No freaking idea. Maybe the Weird Alley sex goblins. That sex isn't supposed to end until the lady's boobs start whistling. This sounds like something your older brother would come up with and tell you to duck with you. When I was homeschooled, my mom told me that masturbating caused cancer because you'd be too aggressive to your ball sack due to the motion. I feel bad for my father now. That's ironic because it actually helps to prevent prostate cancer. Men are completely incapable of controlling themselves. Made it sound to everyone that we had no control over our bodies, thoughts or actions, and that we spray urine and semen at everything that crosses our path. As a Muslim raised girl, this one pisses me off. In some religions cultures they put an emphasis on covering up girls so they won't get RPed. If you ask why, the answer is men can't control themselves. This is such a harmful mindset because men are viewed as primitive beings that have no control of their actions. And that if anything happens to a girl it's her fault for provoking the man with her clothes actions. It's a shitty take all around that infuriated me to no end. Wrap it twice. Just as nice. The condoms rub against one another and have a greater chance of breaking. One is fine. What you do is you put one on and then add hot sauce and then put on the other one. I had a gym teacher say it's impossible to have sex with a woman if she didn't want to because the hole closes up if she doesn't want to. He went to jail for guess what? Tax fraud. I basically had the same sex ed they gave in Mean Girls. The whole condoms don't work. Pills don't guarantee 100%. So if you have sex, you will get pregnant. If you have sex. I had no sex education. Not from parents or school. Our school's excuse for sex ed was a 1-hour presentation where the girls and boys were separated. Girls were taught about periods, what an STD was and how pregnancy happens. Nothing about actual sex. Nothing about men's bodies. Nothing about safe sex. Nothing about birth control. I had never heard of a clitoris until I was 14. Thank God for the internet. And that's the message that we deliver to little kids and expect them not to know what a woman's clitoris is. You guys got sex ed? In primary school they decided to separate the boys and girls classes and show the boys the girls sex ed video and vice versa. Our teacher told us all the different types of sex. Oral, vaginal, anal, and some girl asked him if finger banging counted as sex. He said, no, it doesn't. The girl then proudly proclaimed that she was still a virgin. That was grade 5 folks. Abstinence is the only way to get to heaven. Unless you are married. Total BS. There's a stairway you can buy. I went to a school in a wealthy suburb in Texas. Our school was forced to teach SARV sex. Not SARF sex. So, abstinence only. No discussion on condoms or any other type of birth control. Like a third of the female students graduated with at least one secret abortion under their belts. We got separated. Girls in one room and boys in another. And proceeded to tell us girls it will hurt no matter what and we have to be the careful ones with contraception and STD contraction. Whilst the boys got it's cool, you're fine. Luckily my mum and I are close, so having that talk was a lot more insightful and easier than the shitty they gave us at school. We had an abstinence educator talk to my 10th grade class about some activities that didn't involve vaginal intercourse. Some kid in the back of the room recommended an L. It was all over at that point. Edit. Holy shit, Reddit, I had to charge my phone in my kitchen because the alerts were keeping me up. Shine on you glorious weirdos. We never really spoke about it. Which I guess is worse. To be fair, my friend didn't get pregnant until after mandatory. When she was 16. It's mandatory for girls to get pregnant at 16. When I was in middle school, an 8th grader told me that men have a set number of sperm, so if I masturbated too much I'd never have kids. Edit. Holy shit. This blew up. Thanks for all the happy cake days. Y'all. If that were true, I think most men would be infertile by their 20s. Lol. Only coloreds transmit STDs. 80s rural Midwest town. They showed us this very sad video where a girl got pregnant, but couldn't handle motherhood, so she suffocated her baby with a pillow. What the duck? Mine was at an all-girls school. Every time you have sex with a man, you lose some of your special glue. If you lose all your special glue, no one will want to marry you. Seems like more sex would get you more special glue. Go to your room. Not exactly sex ed. But in the 5th grade, our class was separated into boys and girls and shown VHS tapes about our changing bodies. For the girls, I distinctly remember the tape talking about acne and that guys won't find you attractive if you have pimples. Huge confidence killer later when I ended up getting acne as a teenager. In my French language class in high school, the teacher explicitly told our class, 100% white, that we should have lots of children in the future to outbreed them. Straight up dominionist bullshit. That was 35 years ago. But it still takes up space in my head. Did anyone else get the tape thing? My teacher took 2 pieces of duct tape and stuck them to her sleeves. She would then peel them off and re-stick them to her sleeves, getting the backside of the tape more linty each time. She said that the pieces of tape were people, and every time she put them on her sleeve it represented them having sex with a different person. Eventually when she put them together they didn't stick very well from all shirt fibers, and this meant they were so emotionally disconnected they couldn't form a lasting bond. So don't have sex or you'll be a broken shell of a person unable to love. That men had to be circumcised before having sex, or the foreskin would rip, leading to all kinds of infections, permanent injury, or even death. It, for all the unlucky enough men commenting about their frenulum ripping. That's not what I'm talking about. It sucks. It's incredibly painful. And it's a very real danger. But it is not what I was told was going to happen to my penis. This was an adult male science teacher telling a bunch of 11 and 12-year boys that if they tried to have sex without getting circumcised, that their foreskin was going to rip in half like a banana peel and they were either going to become impotent, get of gangrene of the DCK, or bleed to death as a result. Edit 2. Thanks for the reward. It's my first one. Is that a little covered mask? That's cute. Thanks. Every time you have sex, it's like taking tissues out of a box. And nobody really wants an empty tissue box. Got shown bad pics of STDs and a live birth where a woman ripped really bad. We were basically told to not have sex no matter what until we got married. Funny thing is that my high school junior high had the highest teen pregnancy rate in our district. I was homeschooled. All my dad told me was you stick it in. You jizz. Then it's over. What sex said? All we were really taught was the name of the different parts of the body for boys and girls. At least that is all I remember from middle school health class. I remember in 2nd grade being taught to never mix blood with other people because I could get HIV, which would kill me. Fun times. When a mother breastfeeds her child, she'll often become sexually aroused. This is normal. The vagina forms a suction around the penis. The breastfeeding fact is really useful for first-time mothers. Because it's true and it can be alarming. Most people with breasts like having nipple stimulation during sex. And until you give birth. That's really the only use for your nipples. If you breastfeed, the baby's sucking can create feelings of sexual arousal on a purely physical level. But some new moms get worried and disgusted at the thought that they've got some kind of pedophilic attraction to the baby. And that's obviously a really embarrassing experience. So they're not going to ask others around them to find out that it's normal. And it's not real attraction. It's just some mixed up physical responses. Close bracket. So, it's a really useful thing to tell a first-time parent. I would typically wait until I was dealing with people who intended to give birth, rather than a whole group of high schoolers. That lesbians were 100% safe from sexually transmitted diseases. Then what the duck are dental dams for? A woman should always carry a condom in their purse. So should you ever be ped assaulted, you can at least prevent pregnant. Oh sorry Mr. Rapist. Could you wear this condom before forcing yourself on me? Thanks. That we girls are like a clean piece of tape until we have sex, and then we get dirtier every time until we no longer are useful as tape. Then they demonstrated by putting 2 dirty pieces of tape together that couldn't stick any longer. I was told that I would die if I got pregnant. Trick is to never get married. That way none of the sex was premarital. Sometimes a boy will be attracted to a boy. This is just an unhealthy phase. And will pass. Textbook in Missouri. I'm glad we had a competent and down-to-earth teacher for sex ed. She started class by filling up a condom with water, saying, "If a guy tells you he doesn't want to wear a condom because his DCK is too big for it, remember this." Then she held up this big as water balloon condom and proceeded watering the plants while telling us about some guy she dated who insisted that he could fill up an entire condom with his load, muttering, "Fill it with bullshit, alright." Close bracket. She made class so much fun. She also looked like MS Frizzle. In HS, we were allowed to write down questions before the class started and they would be read without identifying us. My question was, will we be learning safe sex for gay lesbian relationships? My teacher looked uncomfortable and basically said no because the state guidelines wouldn't allow him to talk about those kind of relationships and only heterosexual relationships. Basically it was the worst advice cause we never got it. If a guy wants to pay you, just close your legs really tight and contract everything down there. It's impossible to open your legs if you do this. If a girl gets paid, she must have wanted it to happen at least a bit. I left the classroom and went to the principal's office to complain. She got fired. Edit. Some people don't believe it's a true story. That's okay, I know nothing ever happens in real life. To clarify, she wasn't a teacher. She was invited by the school to talk to us because she was in some kind of association dedicated to the youth. But she used that to promote her very conservative views. Pro-life, homophobic, and the principal didn't know that. Don't do it. And that's everything you need to know about sex. Somewhat related. But the first girl I started doing stuff with in high school made me wear a condom while giving me a hand job. She made it out to be like it was the normal thing to do, and I guess it made sense because it meant cum didn't go flying everywhere. However, it made things really awkward with the next girl I was with, and I pulled out a condom when she was playing with me. She was like, "Whoa, I'm not ready to have sex with you yet." I then explained that I wasn't trying to mean that and I just thought it was normal to put a condom on for a hand job. She informed me that it was not and it was a bit weird. Totally killed the mood and she left right after the movie we were watching ended. If you get paid, just suck it up and report the guy after it's done. Masturbation elongates your penis. This happened at a school camp and the one teacher said it. Half of my class were just tugging their slugs for the rest of THST afternoon. We played a board game in high school health class where essentially you landed on a space, were given a sexual situation, and if you chose to engage in the sexual situation, you would have to take a card, which we quickly learned all had graphic pictures of stees on them. My situation was that I, a very obviously gay 17-year-old, was watching a movie with my very real, very heterosexual boyfriend and cuddling under a blanket. So should I keep my hands above the blanket? Or should I put my hands below the blanket with him? I obviously picked hands above the blanket because I really didn't want to see a picture of herpes at 10 in the morning. But, you know, all those hand jobs in monogamous relationships that led to you getting insty? 8th grade, public school. Look at this picture of a DCK with yellow discharge coming out of it. Don't have sex. 9th grade, Catholic school. Condoms don't even protect from STDs because the infection virus can go through the microscopic holes that are found in all condoms. My sex ed teacher strongly implied PRN was why Ted Bundy murdered people and also pressed the idea that virginity was tied to a woman's value. She didn't say it wasn't the same for guys, but she made several different analogies and the female students in each example were always shown as the ones depreciating and the male students were always shown to have less interest. Just don't have sex. A ridiculous amount of school including mine say this and it's the stupidest thing. Do they seriously expect it to work? And now when the kids who got that advice have sex, they don't know how to do it safely. The worst sex ed advice that schools give is the omission of advice at all. Abstinence is the only 100% effective form of birth control. Well, no shitty. But we're teenagers. And we're gonna duck. So you'd better start giving us some alternative. That the age of consent is technically 13. It is if you jump through a lot of shady hoops. But their teacher got arrested a few years later for perving on a bunch of students, so if you swallow semen at least once a week, you'll get better grades. He failed me anyway. To remember the word urethra by thinking of Aretha Franklin. In middle school, an abstinent speaker told us that an L would permanently loosen our buttholes. So much so that we would uncontrollably shitty ourselves. In Alabama, we just got a Slither of disease, genitals and abstinence only. 7th grade music teacher told us that AIDS and other sex diseases were caused by performing unnatural sexual acts like fellatio. Then proceeded to explain what fellatio was. We had started class talking about opera. The worst advice I got was during an activity about pro-life, pro-choice. 5 girls, including myself, sat in a line and were given different life scenarios and if we would keep a child. Mine was getting pregnant during a one-night stand while being a freshman in college. And that I would have complications because of health-related reasons. I said I would have aborted because of the college, financial, and health issues. My teacher continues to grill me on why I would make that decision. Finally she said to me, "You would likely be able to triumph any medical challenges and there are organizations and your parents could help you raise the child. New child is a gift and the most important thing a woman could ask for. Why do they ask you questions if they only want one answer?" Since there is too many people joking around and lying, I need to say this is real. We had separate sex ed classes for girls and boys around age 14. So in our boys class, one of the teachers said, "Only have sex with other boys before marriage. It's the only way to practice sex without spreading disease." Then he proceeded to say that, "You might not like hearing that, but you will be taught this in college by professors or LGBT sex ed than any school I've heard of." Went to public school. Got kicked out of class one day because I called the teacher out for only teaching abstinence and not safe sex. Then I got kicked out of the class for the rest of the semester for not signing an abstinence contract. My parents were always open with the sex topics with us growing up, so they made my favorite dinner for me that night. Every time you have sex you lose a piece of yourself you'll never get back. Like, were we talking about sex or amputation? Seriously, the stupidest thing I've ever heard to this day. My teacher warned us that it was always the quiet girls who end up pregnant at 16. I am a quiet girl. I vividly recall the entire class turning and staring at me when this happened. Promoting abstinence was awesome until I realized it was not my decision to still be a virgin. In my sex ed class I dissected a flower. Not sure what that has to do with anything, I just remember a lot of talk about the stamen and the pistil. Girls pee from their butts. If you sleep with someone who is not a virgin, then it's the same as if you had slept with all of their past partners. She even had the class pick out a random girl and pick out a random boy. Then she decided to say if Timmy and Sally would have sex, and Sally had sex before marriage, then Timmy essentially just slept with all the men Sally slept with. Sally's face was the reddest I've ever seen anyone's face get during the whole thing. That if you were feeling kinda tingly that you were about to have a brain aneurysm and you needed to stop immediately or you would die. Thanks for that one, asshole.